Good morning. It's good to be with you, even if it is electronically. And I look forward to the day when we can actually be face to face again. It'll come soon. It was interesting. A few days ago, I think it was this past week anyway. I remember feeling kind of I don't like my hair. It just feels dirty, and I hadn't showered that morning. So it's pretty typical to shower every day, wash my hair every day. But I had to smile because I remembered the way it was back in the 70s. And the way it was then was that it was standard, accepted, normal practice for women to go to the beauty shop once a week. And in a nutshell, what happened was you would go in, they would remove any pins, hairpins that you had. I used to have a hair piece, a wiglet that they called it. So to take all that off, take the wiglet off, whatever you had, and then brush out your hair really good and wash it, put it on rollers, put you under the dryer. When you came out, then they brushed through that and they began to tease, which is back combing your hair to give it volume, poof and all that. Spraying the whole time. So they were back combing, spraying. They shaped it into whatever the shape was that the style was at that time, and then sprayed it again. So you walked out, and your hair didn't move. I remember buying a silk pillow slip so that my hair would slide, not come undone. What we would do would be, if you needed to scratch your head, if you had an itch, you would take a pencil or a pen and just, go to that spot. And you didn't mess up your hair. And then a week later, you'd go and repeat the whole process. Well, the thing about that is, in comparing what that was then and what is now, to not wash my hair or comb it, brush it at all for an entire week now makes me want to go, ooh. But that was then, and things are different now. Things are always changing. I think human nature, ourselves individually and as a society, we're working for something more, something better, trying to achieve and grow and expand and so forth. And I think that's great because look at how far we've come. Humankind, not just the accomplishments that have been made in this lifetime for me. And for the most part, I think the changes are really good. Changes happens to have been better for the most part. Certainly, even if one didn't wash your hair every day, the ability to have a blow dryer and you go and not have to go through all that rigmarole is faster, easier, better. It's better in terms of things in general. Efficiency, effectiveness, sometimes safety. Just looking at everything. Industrialization happened at the turn of the 20th century, I guess, in the 1800s into the 1900s. And, we got electricity, we got running water inside the house. All of those things were all changes for the better. We continue to improve our lot, if you will, in life. They're also, I think, since considering like the 70s in particular, they're more humane. Product testing used to involve animals much more than they do now. I think now there's more of a tendency to a willingness and an agreement to consider life sacred, all forms of life, and dignity in life is more respected. So not nearly as much product testing on animals. Medicine, when you consider medicine, if you've seen old Westerns, if somebody got shot, the doctor would come, he would give the patient a couple of slugs of whiskey, give him a stick to bite down on, and then just dig out the shell. Things have improved. They have changed greatly in terms of medicine. physical medicine things they're able to do things now that we never would have dreamed before. You know, operations on a fetus before it's even born. So, you know, all kinds of things. It's amazing. Mental illnesses have come a long way too. I remember I've seen and read and seen movies of the institutions that they used to put people with mental problems into institutions, and they were horrible, I guess is the word I would use. That they provided the very minimum in terms of food, clothing, shelter, but people were treated as almost like animals. They were, you know, no other needs were taken care of. There certainly was little, if no, attempt at healing, you know, of coming through, of changing, of, you know, helping these people to live normal lives. So along the mental illness lines, things were very different. I even remember reading not that long ago, some years back, of course, but I read a book on the Kennedy family. Joseph Kennedy was the patriarch of this clan, and his siblings included John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Teddy, and, you know, a bunch of them. There was also a daughter. I think her name was Rose. It seemed from what I remember reading about her is that she had some mental challenges. I think probably today we might call them developmentally delayed, perhaps. But growing up in a clan like that, I imagine the pressure was pretty intense to, you know, be like your brothers and sisters. As I recall, as a child, they did all right in the family with her, but by the time she reached adolescence, she was very much aware of the differences between what she could do and did do and then those of her siblings. So she began to act out, and things, I guess, were pretty tumultuous in their household. Joseph made the decision as father of the head, you know, head of the family, to have a procedure done that was in vogue, I guess, at the time. Thankfully, a short period of time, I think, where that was done. He had her, he had the doctors give her a lobotomy, which makes me just cringe when I think about it. Things are a lot more humane now. And I think when I think about these changes, I believe that for the most part, the transition was fairly smooth and pretty easy. And when you think about it, who would not want to have, you know, have running water inside the house? Who would not want to flip a switch and have lights come on rather than lighting lamp after lamp or candle after candle? Even the silly example of hair, you know, these things are all devices and practices outside of our values for the most part. So they're easy. I can think of a couple that there may have been a couple of little bumps and there was some resistance. One case in point was the horse and carriage versus the horseless carriage. And there was a faction that really opposed automobiles. Didn't see that as something that was going to remain popular, and, you know, people should just stay with horse and carriage and it'd be better. Well, that didn't happen, and eventually that resistance diminished and went away, and now not everybody has a car, but many people have cars, and it's normal. So most of the time, these transitions are pretty easy and peaceful, and sometimes they're not. as I think about some of them, I believe that maybe what a reason for that is the sometimes in some of these situations and transitions that are happening and have been happening for the last few decades, they are issues that are core for us in terms of morals, in terms of religious beliefs, and so forth. And so things like interracial marriage that was illegal in states, I don't know about all, many, I think, in the 50s, 40s and 50s, and that eventually was changed so that is no longer a law, or even, it is much more socially acceptable now for there to be mixed race couples. It has been accepted now. It was a transition, and it was one that took longer than I think the horse and carriage did, and there were protests and so forth. Another change that was difficult, and still is, we're still working with it, is the LGBT community, and becoming more aware of ways that we can support them, ways that we can help them live fearless and empowered lives. The right for gay couples and lesbian couples to marry is recent, the 2000s, I think, for Missouri. So, and there was a lot of spiritual, religious context around that transition. It still is, and now we have transgender. So these issues are not as easy to, or not as easy to transition from one thing to another, to shift and grow would be an arguable word for some people. So I think that's what's happening. So what do we do? We are in what has been called the cancel culture. As I understand it, that refers to, just getting rid of those things that we have come to realize were offensive, they were, wrong in some way, demeaning. And so the cancel culture, like taking down statues and so forth, is just wipe all this out. It shouldn't have been. And yet, I myself have been looking at a lot of these kinds of things, and where do I stand? What do I think about some of these? I remember an incident when I was in ministerial school. In the last year, we had a community meeting. We had these every quarter as a class, and we were such a harmonious class. We got along. Any disagreements were minor, and they were talked through easily by the individuals. So we were really, we were great, and we made decisions as a class very easily until the second year, and we were asked to decide what color robe we wanted to wear for ordination. We spent a good amount of time talking about white robes versus black robes versus cream-colored robes or off-white. Just was a whole lot of discussion, but we could not land on a decision. The chaplain that we had at the time asked for time of silence, and so we did that, and it was interesting because when we came out of it, one of the women, who is of Hispanic descent, shared that she had realized, it wasn't a conscious thing, but she shared that she realized in that meditation that the white robe for her had connotations to the Klan. Blew me away. I think it surprised even her. She didn't know at all that was behind what she was feeling as resistance to being in a white robe. Once she shared that and that came out, she was comfortable. She knew that the robes that we were using were a symbol not of clan, but of newness, starting over, if you will, you know, taking on this new life of ministry. So we voted unanimously to have white robes. Excuse me. But my point is this: sometimes these issues are buried deeply inside us, and we're not even aware. Sometimes, you know. So it could be in this time of heightened sensitivity to others that we may not be aware of what's inside. We may just experience some resistance and pushback on whatever it is that's being proposed. Some of the ways I think that this cancel culture is showing up is, one, in literature. You know, I've been hearing things about people wanting to get rid of like books like To Kill a Mockingbird because of the languaging in there and some of the concepts. That was then, this is now. Uncle Tom's Cabin, another one that was way up there because its language is pretty offensive in today's terms, for sure. There was a play that I saw, and I may have mentioned it to you guys when I was there. I know I've spoken from the pulpit about it, but I don't know if it was from you to you guys. But I saw a play at the Rep, and it had to do with a librarian who was given an award for her work on freedom of the press, and she opposed a congressman in the South who wanted to ban a book from the library. It was a children's book and had a white rabbit and a black rabbit, and they wanted to get married and the rabbit wedding or something like that. Anyway, this literature is near and dear to my heart because I read a lot, and I really don't want to eliminate all these things, you know. So one thing that I think is relevant in the cancel culture is that we might it might behoove us to take a look at what's inside. If we are the ones either saying no, leave those alone, or get rid of them, either side, sit with yourself, you know, like take that silence and look and see, what does that mean for you? What is this about for you? Sometimes I think that we don't want to see that man's inhumanity to man aspect that is in all of us in varying degrees, but we don't like to look at it. And maybe that's one reason why people are saying get rid of it. In doing so, we're just shedding any attachment, any responsibility, I guess, of that ever having occurred or been the case. Literature, status symbols, the statues, the flag, Confederate flag is one, and then there's also the couldn't read my writing. Sorry, portrayals, the way different cultures are represented in our culture. So, in our culture. So, the Washington Redskins team, you know, they're finally saying we're going to change that name, and there have been people who have been against that for a long time. People are being identified as having done blackface years back. All those things might be sensitive to the culture in question, you know. So that bury it, delete it, remove it. I saw something on Twitter, I think, or something. I don't know, Facebook. I thought it was a great comparison. It said, do we want to bury this? Do we want to remove it? Or do we want to seek the context of it? Look at the context of what it was. You know, perhaps we could, you know, in looking at that, really say, that was then, this is now. We could say that that was then. If somebody said, I can't because I have to wash my hair, in the context of those times in the 70s, that was a thing. We've already been through all that you had to do. But in context of today, it'd be like, you can't take 30 minutes to shower and wash your hair. So it is. What about context? What looking at context does for us, I think, is it allows for individual decisions. It allows for us to look at perhaps each statute individually and look at the context. Instead of making a blanket regulation law, whatever, of just eliminating anything having to do with Civil War, look at it. What is this? And what is the context of it? When we do that, we are able, like the woman with the robe, we're able to see maybe inside what's inside ourselves and then make better decisions. We may make decisions that were different from our initial response, but they may be in sync with our initial response. But it can be individual, it can be, and probably will be better decisions. And finally, they'll be better accepted. So whether we're doing it on an individual basis or on a group basis or even a culture or society basis, looking at context, I think is important. Perhaps, just one example, perhaps a statue maybe it isn't, I'm not going to say should, maybe it would be best not to have it in the center of the town, but it could be in a museum here's a Civil War museum. This is this and this is that, and have lots and lots of mementos of that time period. And the fact that the general or whoever it was successful, was a major character can be recognized in that context. Maybe not in town square so that the whole city, state, and nation sees that this is somebody we revere. So when we're looking at these transitions and we feel something, we feel resistance or whatever, we can feel that upsetness, I call it, and we feel resistance. It might be fear, it might be anger, it might be frustration, worry, hurt, perhaps. That's the upsetness when these things come up. If we go with that, then we're going to be where we've always been. But we can notice that, like when we noticed in our discussion about the robes, there's something that is not sitting well with everyone. When we notice that, we have an opportunity to do what I call being curious. When we have curiosity about something, it is kind of bypassing all that emotional stuff. It is a chance to look at, what do I think about this? How do I feel about this? What do others think about this? What do others feel about this? So it's a way of being curious, not to supply answers, not to come to a solution, but just being curious. Where do I stand with it? I don't know what I'm going to decide. Where do others stand on it? We don't know what they're going to decide, but just being curious. The third thing, how do I think? How do I feel? How do others think? How do they feel? A third question I think is appropriate, and is it demeaning? Is whatever this is it demeaning to anyone? And if so, to whom? So we want to be really knowledgeable, in this curiosity, looking at the situation. How do I feel? How do I think? How do others think? And is it demeaning? So that was then, this is now. We can see that some of these transitions that we are looking at um, go deep, and so we may well have emotion and resistance perhaps about something. But if we can recognize that, number one, if we can have curiosity about number two, we have a better chance of coming to a good resolution and acceptance. And then adding a third ingredient, I think, is going to benefit ourselves, others, our whole society a thousandfold, and that is introducing the notion of peace. To have peace around a situation, around an incident, around one of these transitions is imperative. And in the human sense, we want to detach ourselves from that. The best way I know to do that is to go into prayer meditation, to be silent with it. And when we do that, then we are able to tap into that spiritual part of ourselves, that sacred space. And when we do that, then we can become peaceful, because it is that peace, the peace of the Christ, that soothes and settles and allows us to step back from anything that is on the human level. It is that what Jesus called the peace that passes understanding. And then when we are in that peaceful place, then use curiosity in the way that we've described it. That was then, this is now. Well, now there is a lot of turmoil right now. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. That was then. It wasn't that we were bad. It wasn't that we were wrong. Many times it was simply that we were simply unaware. Simply unaware. Now, we're not unaware anymore. A positive way to say that is that we are aware. We know the truth of who and what we are. We are beings, children of God, and we can elect to face these things, to be curious about these things, to be peaceful about these things. And when we are peace, amazing changes can happen. Be peace, my friends. God bless.